awakening silence was the first thing she noticed. Not the absence of sound, but the profound quiet of deep space, where even the hum of machinery felt like an intrusion upon eternity. Commander Elena Vasquez opened her eyes to darkness, then to the soft blue glow of the cryopod's display panel. Her lungs burned as they remembered how to breathe. Her muscles ached with the memory of being frozen for longer than any human was meant to endure. The pod hissed open. Cold air rushed across her skin as sensation returned to limbs that had been motionless for 4,000 years. 4,000 years. The number felt impossible, like trying to hold an ocean in her hands. Around her, other pods were opening in sequence, each one releasing another ghost from humanity's past into an uncertain future. Status, Elena croaked, her voice rough from disuse. She gripped the edge of her pod and pulled herself upright, fighting the vertigo that came with resurrection. Her fingers found the wall panel, activating the ship's systems one by one. Lights flickered on throughout the massive vessel, revealing corridors that stretched into darkness, empty chambers that once held thousands, and observation windows showing nothing but the endless void between stars. Commander Vasquez, this is Dr. Marcus Webb, a voice crackled through her neural implant. The communication was fuzzy, distorted by time and failing technology. I'm in the medical bay with 14 others. We're alive, but we need to run full diagnostics. The cryo systems show significant degradation. Elena pulled herself toward the nearest console, her body slowly remembering how to move in zero gravity. The holographic display materialized before her, showing the ship's status in painful detail. The Ark Phoenix, humanity's last desperate gamble for survival, had endured its long sleep but barely. Power reserves were at 18%. Life support systems were operating on backup generators. Navigation computers showed corrupted data spanning millennia, but they were alive. Against every probability, against the heat death that should have claimed them centuries ago, they had survived. She made her way to the bridge, passing through sections of the ship that triggered memories she wished would stay buried. This corridor had led to the observation deck where families gathered for one last look at Earth before the jump. That chamber had been the school where children learned about a home they would never see again. Every bulkhead, every doorway held the echo of 50,000 voices that were now reduced to fewer than 300 survivors. The bridge was smaller than she remembered, or perhaps she had simply grown larger in her own perception. Captain's chair, navigation station, weapons control, communications array, all of it covered in a fine layer of crystallized moisture, the frozen breath of a dying ship. She activated the primary systems, watching as power flowed through circuits that had slept for 40 centuries. All personnel. This is Commander Vasquez, she announced through the ship-wide communication system. I need department heads to report to the bridge immediately. Everyone else, begin revival procedures for your sections. We need to know how many made it through. They came in slowly over the next hour. Dr. Webb arrived first, his face gaunt but determined. He had been 35 when they entered cryosleep. His reflection in the glass showed a man who looked exactly the same, preserved in time while the universe aged around him. Lieutenant Chen followed, then Engineering Chief Kowalski, then Security Officer Tomas Reyes. Each one carried the same expression of disbelief and stubborn resolve. How many? Elena asked when they had assembled. Webb consulted his datapad. 273 confirmed viable revivals. Another 46 are undergoing emergency medical procedures. We lost the rest. Cryopod failures, power fluctuations, system degradation over time. His voice remained clinical, but Elena could see the pain in his eyes. They had started with 50,000 souls fleeing Earth's destruction. Now they numbered in the hundreds. What woke us? Chen asked, her fingers dancing across the navigation console. The automatic revival shouldn't have triggered for another 1,000 years, and only if we encountered a habitable system. Kowalski brought up a signal analysis on the main screen. This is what triggered the wake protocols. It's a distress beacon, but the signature is unlike anything in our databases. The encryption is sophisticated, possibly quantum entangled, and it's broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't even be possible with known physics. Elena studied the waveform pattern. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost organic, as if the signal itself were alive. Where is it coming from? That's the interesting part, Chen replied. It's coming from the direction of Sol system, from where Earth used to be. The bridge fell silent. Earth. The word carried weight that transcended mere planetary designation. It was memory and loss, hope and ashes. Everything they had been and everything they could never return to. The galactic sovereignty had made certain of that. Their massive fleet had descended upon humanity's homeworld 4,000 years ago, not to conquer but to eradicate. The official reason, as broadcast across their vast empire, was simple. Humanity represented an evolutionary threat to galactic stability. Elena remembered the last transmission from Earth. She had been aboard the Phoenix, one of 5 ARC ships being hastily loaded with refugees when the message came through. The Sovereignty's weapons had been precise and merciless. Kinetic bombardment from orbit, plasma strikes that boiled oceans, antimatter warheads that left craters where cities had stood. 12 billion humans died in less than 6 hours. The 5 ARC ships had escaped only because they were already in deep space when the attack began, hidden among the outer planets, preparing for a colonization mission to Alpha Centauri that would never happen. "Play the signal," Elena ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. What emerged was not words but pure data, compressed and encoded in patterns that their computers struggled to translate. But embedded within the noise was something else. A voice, human and desperate, speaking English across 4,000 years of silence. "Anyone who remembers, Earth stands." The Sovereignty lied. "We endured. Return home. Phoenix protocol active." The message repeated, fragments of meaning in an ocean of static. Phoenix protocol. Those words triggered something in Elena's memory. She pulled up the ship's archives, searching through old files that predated the Sovereignty attack. There, buried in classified military documents, she found it. The Phoenix Protocol had been humanity's contingency plan, created in secret during the first year of contact with the galactic sovereignty. Some human strategists had suspected that the elder races of the galaxy would not tolerate competition. They had been right. The protocol called for the creation of hidden bases, encrypted databases of human knowledge, and fail-safes that would preserve humanity's legacy, even if Earth fell. But it was supposed to activate immediately after the attack, not 4,000 years later. "Someone survived," Webb said quietly, reaching the same conclusion. "Someone stayed behind and kept the protocol running all this time." "Or something," Reyes added. "That signal could be artificial intelligence. A computer program executing orders from the grave." Elena made her decision. "Set course for Sol system. Best possible speed." "Commander, we should be cautious," Chen protested. "We don't know what we're flying into. The Sovereignty might still control that space. We're one ship with barely 300 people. Against their empire we're ghosts," Elena interrupted. "We're the dead returned to life. Every species in the galaxy thinks humanity is extinct, erased from history itself. That gives us an advantage they can't possibly predict." She stood, gripping the command chair. "Besides, if there's even a chance that someone from Earth survived, that any fragment of our home remains, we owe it to the 12 billion who died to find out." The Phoenix's engines came to life. Fusion reactors building power after their long dormancy. The ship had been designed for a 10-year journey to Alpha Centauri. Now it would make a journey 10 times longer, back toward the very heart of the space they had fled. But the vessel humanity had built all those centuries ago was more than a refugee transport. Hidden within its civilian exterior were weapon systems that violated a dozen sovereignty regulations, drive technology that pushed the boundaries of known physics, and manufacturing capabilities that could turn raw materials into almost anything given enough time. They had 4,000 years of technological development lost to cryosleep, but they also had 4,000 years of pure survival instinct coded into their plans. The Phoenix had been built with one purpose beyond saving lives, ensuring that if humanity died, it would die fighting. As the ship accelerated toward Sol system, Elena accessed the long-range sensors. What they showed made her blood run cold. The galaxy had changed. The Sovereignty's territory had expanded dramatically, encompassing thousands of systems that had been independent when the Phoenix fled. But more troubling were the signs of resistance. Energy signatures from battles, debris fields from destroyed fleets, entire sectors marked as quarantine zones. The Sovereignty had not been idle in 4 millennia. They had tightened their grip on the galaxy, crushing dissent wherever it arose. "Commander, I'm picking up multiple signals now," Chen reported. "Communications traffic, navigation beacons, commercial broadcasts. The Sovereignty has established a massive infrastructure throughout this region. We're going to be passing through heavily monitored space. Can we avoid detection? Kowalski shook his head. Not indefinitely. Our stealth capabilities are 40 centuries out of date. Against their current sensor technology, we'll stand out like a supernova. Elena considered their options. They could try to slip through unnoticed, avoiding major shipping lanes and military installations. Or they could announce themselves, demand recognition as a sovereign human vessel with rights under whatever laws the sovereignty claimed to uphold. Both approaches had fatal flaws. There's a third option, Reyes suggested. We don't run and we don't negotiate. We observe. We learn everything we can about how the sovereignty operates now, what technologies they've developed, what species they've subjugated. We become information gatherers first, warriors second. You're suggesting we become spies in our own galaxy, Webb said. I'm suggesting we become smart about this, Reyes countered. Revenge is pointless if we die in the attempt. But if we can understand our enemy, find their weaknesses, maybe even find allies among the species they've conquered, then we have a chance, not just at revenge, but at actually making a difference. Elena looked at each of her officers in turn. They were exhausted, traumatized, and outnumbered by a factor of trillions, but they were also human, and humans had never been particularly good at knowing when to quit. It was perhaps the trait that had made the sovereignty fear them enough to commit genocide. All right, she said. We do this smart. Chen, plot us a course that takes us through the outer edges of sovereignty space. Avoid direct contact, but get close enough to their communication networks that we can tap into them. Kowalski, I want you to analyze every piece of technology we encounter. If they've advanced beyond us, we need to know how and by how much. Webb, start reviewing our medical capabilities. We might be making contact with species we've never encountered. Reyes, you're on tactical analysis. I want to know how the sovereignty fights, how they deploy their forces, what weaknesses we can exploit. She paused, letting her next words carry the weight they deserved. And everyone needs to understand this. We are not the humans who fled Earth 4,000 years ago. We are what came after. We are the survivors of an extinction event. And we're returning to a galaxy that tried to forget we ever existed. So we're going to remind them. We're going to show them that you can't kill humanity just by destroying a planet. You'd have to kill the idea of humanity itself. And that, my friends, is immortal. The Phoenix accelerated into the darkness, carrying its precious cargo of 300 ghosts toward a reckoning that had been 40 centuries in the making. Behind them, the empty space where they had drifted in cryogenic suspension slowly filled with the exhaust plumes of their fusion engines. Ahead, somewhere in the vast expanse of the Sovereignty's empire, lay answers to questions that had haunted every human dream during their long sleep. Why had they been targeted for extinction? Had any other survivors endured? What had become of the galaxy in their absence? And most importantly, what would humanity become now that they had returned from the grave? Elena stood on the bridge and watched the stars shift as they entered faster-than-light travel. The Phoenix Protocol was active. Humanity had been given a second chance. Now they would discover if they deserved it, and if the galaxy was ready for what they had become in exile. The journey home had begun, and with it, a reckoning that would reshape the galaxy forever. Shadows rising. The observation deck of the Phoenix had become Elena's refuge during the long journey toward Sol system. She stood before the panoramic viewport, watching distant stars streak past as the ship maintained its faster-than-light velocity. 3 months had passed since their awakening. 3 months of gathering intelligence about a galaxy that had moved on without humanity. What they had discovered was both enlightening and horrifying. The galactic sovereignty had evolved from a loose confederation of elder species into something far more authoritarian. Where once there had been councils and debates, now there was only the High Command, a group of 7 species who ruled absolutely. They maintained power through a combination of technological superiority and ruthless enforcement. Any species that advanced too quickly, that showed too much innovation or independence, found themselves facing immediate subjugation or elimination. Humanity had been their first genocide, but not their last. Commander, we're approaching the Kravik system, Chen announced through the intercom. Long-range scans confirm a sovereignty military installation on the 3rd planet. Defenses appear moderate. Estimated garrison strength of 5,000 personnel. Elena activated her neural interface, pulling up the tactical display directly into her visual cortex. The Kravik system was a backwater, barely worth the sovereignty's attention except for one critical factor. It housed a data nexus, one of hundreds scattered throughout their empire that stored historical records and maintained the vast communication network that held their territory together. "Initiate stealth approach," Elena ordered. "Get us within scanning range, but keep us outside their detection envelope. Reyes, you're up. I want a full analysis of their defensive capabilities." Over the past 3 months, the Phoenix had become a ghost ship in truth. They had developed tactics that exploited the sovereignty's complacency. 4,000 years of unchallenged dominance had made them predictable, reliant on automated systems and standardized protocols. Humanity, desperate and innovative, had learned to slip through the cracks of that vast machinery. The Phoenix drifted closer to Kravik III, its hull covered in adaptive camouflage that bent light and sensor waves around its surface. It was technology they had barely understood when they fled Earth, but necessity had forced rapid learning. Dr. Webb's team had spent weeks reverse engineering captured sovereignty equipment, combining it with human ingenuity to create something new, something the elder races had never anticipated. Elena made her way to the Intelligence Center, a converted cargo bay that now housed banks of computers and holographic displays. Lieutenant Sasha Volkov looked up from her station as Elena entered. Volkov had been a linguist before the fall of Earth, specializing in xenoanthropology. Now she was their expert on sovereignty communications and cultural analysis. "What are we looking at?" Elena asked. Volkov gestured at the main display, which showed intercepted communications from the Kravik installation. Routine military traffic mostly. Supply requisitions, personnel transfers, training schedules. But buried in the encrypted channels, there's something interesting. References to incidents in the outer reach sectors, unauthorized transit signatures, reports of ghost ships that appear and disappear without explanation. "They're talking about us," Elena said. "Not specifically. They don't seem to realize there's a pattern yet. But yes, our activities over the past 3 months have been noticed. The sovereignty is confused, which is perhaps the most encouraging thing I've seen since we woke up." Volkov pulled up another data stream. "But there's more. I've been analyzing historical records we've intercepted. Commander, the sovereignty has systematically erased or altered information about at least 15 other species over the past 4 millennia. Not just humanity. Any civilization that showed potential for rapid advancement faced the same fate we did." Elena felt cold anger settle into her bones. 15 species. Billions upon billions of lives erased because they had the audacity to be innovative, to reach for the stars, to ask dangerous questions. The sovereignty called themselves protectors of galactic stability. In truth, they were frightened oligarchs clinging to power by crushing anyone who might threaten their dominance. "How many of those species survived their purges?" Elena asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Based on fragmented records, maybe 3 or 4 had survivors who escaped. But the sovereignty hunted them ruthlessly. As far as we can tell, all were eventually eliminated. We're the only ones who managed to hide long enough that they stopped looking. Elena studied the data, her mind racing through implications. Humanity's survival was not exceptional skill or planning. It was sheer luck combined with the vastness of space. The Phoenix had fled so far into the void, into regions so remote and hostile that even the sovereignty's vast resources couldn't justify continued pursuit. They had declared humanity extinct and moved on to other threats. That mistake would cost them everything. "All right," Elena said. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit this data nexus, but we're not going for destruction. We're going for information. I want every file they have on extinct species, on their military capabilities, on the location of other data centers. And I want to leave them a message they can't ignore." "What kind of message?" Volkov asked. Elena smiled without humor. "The truth. We're going to broadcast the real historical records of Earth's destruction across every channel they have. Let the galaxy see what their benevolent sovereignty actually does to species that dare to innovate." The operation began at 300 hours station time, when the Kravik garrison's automated systems ran their nightly diagnostics. The Phoenix deployed 6 infiltration pods, each carrying a 4-person team equipped with cutting-edge technology cobbled together from human innovation and stolen sovereignty hardware. Reyes led the assault team, his enhanced physiology allowing him to move through the installation's corridors with inhuman speed and precision. Elena watched from the Phoenix's bridge as the operation unfolded. The infiltration teams moved like ghosts through the facility, their adaptive camouflage rendering them nearly invisible to both visual and sensor detection. They encountered minimal resistance. The sovereignty had grown complacent in their dominance, relying on reputation more than actual security. Team 1 in position at the primary data core, Reyes reported. Beginning data extraction now. What happened next took 47 minutes. 47 minutes during which humanity's infiltrators downloaded 4,000 years of hidden history, exposing genocides and cover-ups, revealing the true nature of the sovereignty's rise to power. They learned of species that had been reduced to servitude, of technologies that had been suppressed to maintain the status quo, of resistances that had been crushed before they could spread. But they also found something unexpected. "Commander, you need to see this," Reyes transmitted. His voice carried an edge Elena had never heard before. Excitement mixed with disbelief. "We've found references to a resistance movement. It's fragmented, scattered across multiple systems, but it exists. Species that survived the sovereignty's purges and went underground, literally. There's a network of hidden bases throughout the Empire." Elena's heart raced. They weren't alone. Other survivors, other resistors, other species who refused to accept the sovereignty's dominance. Humanity had spent 3 months believing they were the galaxy's only hope for change. Now they discovered they were part of something larger. "Can you establish contact?" Elena asked, working on it. "The encryption is sophisticated, but I think we can crack it. Give us another 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes stretched like hours. Elena watched the tactical display, knowing that every second they remained near the installation increased the risk of detection. But if they could make contact with the resistance, if they could coordinate their efforts, then humanity's chances of success increased exponentially. "Sovereignty patrol vessels inbound," Chen reported. 3 ships, destroyer class. They're not responding to our presence yet, but they're heading straight for the installation. Arrival time, 18 minutes. "Reyes, you need to expedite," Elena ordered. "Almost there, Commander. Just a few more seconds and..." "Got it. We have contact protocols with the Resistance Network. Uploading now. All teams, extraction in 5 minutes. Chen, prepare for emergency jump the moment everyone's aboard." The infiltration teams withdrew with practiced efficiency, their pods launching back toward the Phoenix as alarms finally began to sound throughout the Kravik installation. The Sovereignty garrison, shocked out of their complacency, scrambled to respond. But by the time their defenses activated, the human operatives were already gone. The Phoenix jumped to faster than light the instant the last pod docked, vanishing from Sovereignty sensors as if it had never existed. Behind them, the Kravik installation descended into chaos as personnel discovered the extent of the data breach. And across every communication channel connected to the installation, a message began broadcasting. It was the last transmission from Earth, unedited and raw. Dr. Sarah Chen's tearful face appeared on millions of screens throughout Sovereignty space, telling the truth about humanity's extinction. Following that came documentation of 14 other genocides, evidence that the Sovereignty had systematically eliminated every species that threatened their dominance. The message couldn't be stopped or contained. It spread through the Sovereignty's own communication network like a virus, jumping from system to system faster than they could shut it down. Within hours, trillions of beings across the galaxy were watching, learning the truth about the government that claimed to protect them. In her private quarters aboard the Phoenix, Elena reviewed the resistance contact protocols Reyes had recovered. The network was more extensive than she had imagined. Dozens of species represented, thousands of cells operating in secret throughout Sovereignty territory. They called themselves the Liberation Front, and they had been fighting a shadow war for over 2 millennia. Elena composed a message, carefully encrypting it using the protocols they had recovered. The message was simple. Humanity survived. We remember Earth. We're ready to help you fight. She transmitted the message into the void and waited. The response came 3 days later, a heavily encrypted communication from an unknown source, bouncing through multiple relay points to obscure its origin. When Elena finally decrypted it, she found herself staring at a holographic image of an alien she had never seen before. The being was reptilian, covered in iridescent scales that shifted color as it moved. Its eyes held intelligence and something else, hope. "I am Vexicthar of the Kelrath species," the being said. Its voice was translated through sophisticated software, rendering alien sounds into perfect English. "My people were one of the first the Sovereignty tried to erase. We survived by learning to hide, to adapt, to fight from the shadows. For 2,000 years, we have waited for someone who could stand openly against the sovereignty's might. We have waited for warriors who could inspire the galaxy to resistance. We believe you are those warriors. The message continued with coordinates and proposed meeting locations. The Kelrath wanted an alliance, a partnership between humanity's unexpected return and the Liberation Front's established network. Together, they might actually threaten the sovereignty's grip on power. Elena called a meeting of her senior staff. In the briefing room, she laid out everything they had learned. The resistance network, the Kelrath proposal, the growing awareness throughout the galaxy of the sovereignty's true nature. She watched her officers process the information, seeing the same mixture of hope and trepidation she felt. "This changes everything," Webb said finally. "We're not just ghosts seeking revenge anymore. We're potential leaders of a galactic revolution. The question is, do we want that responsibility?" Kowalski asked. "We're 300 people. Our mission was to find out what happened to Earth and make the sovereignty pay for their crimes. Now we're talking about liberating the entire galaxy? The two aren't separate," Reyes argued. "We can't truly avenge Earth without dismantling the system that killed it. And we can't do that alone. The Liberation Front needs us as much as we need them." Elena listened to the debate, understanding that this decision would define not just their mission, but humanity's entire legacy. They could remain ghosts, striking from the shadows, gradually wearing down the sovereignty through guerrilla warfare. Or they could step into the light, become the rallying point for species who had suffered under authoritarian rule for millennia. "We meet with the Kelrath," Elena decided, "but we do it carefully. We share information about the sovereignty. We coordinate our efforts, but we don't commit to anything until we understand exactly what we're getting into. We've been extinct for 4,000 years. The galaxy has forgotten what humans are capable of. Let's make sure we remember before we reveal ourselves fully." The meeting with Vexithar took place in a remote nebula, far from any sovereignty patrol routes. The Phoenix rendezvoused with a Kelrath vessel that was equal parts warship and refugee transport. Elena took a small team across in a shuttle, her heart pounding as they approached the alien ship. Vexithar greeted them personally in the docking bay. Up close, the Kelrath leader was even more impressive, standing nearly 8 feet tall with powerful limbs adapted for both land and aquatic environments. But it was the being's eyes that struck Elena most. They held millennia of suffering and stubborn resistance, a determination that matched humanity's own. "Commander Vasquez," Vexithar said, its translated voice carrying warmth. "You cannot imagine what your return means to those of us who fight in the darkness. For so long, we have been told that resistance is futile, that the sovereignty's dominance is inevitable. Then humanity appears, extinct no longer, broadcasting truth across the galaxy. You have given billions of beings something they thought was lost forever. Hope." Elena felt the weight of those words. Hope. Such a simple concept, yet so powerful it could reshape civilizations. "My people are few," she said honestly. "We're survivors, not conquerors. We don't know if we can be what you need us to be." "You already are," Vexithar replied. "The sovereignty has maintained power through fear and the illusion of invincibility. You have shattered that illusion. Every species that has suffered under their rule now knows that resistance is possible, that the sovereignty can be defied. What matters now is not your numbers but what you represent." Over the following hours, Elena and Vexithar planned. The Liberation Front had resources, hidden bases, and operatives throughout sovereignty space. But they lacked coordination and the ability to operate openly. Humanity, though few in number, had advanced technology and the element of surprise. Together, they could become something neither could achieve alone. "There's something you should know," Vexithar said as the meeting drew to a close. "The Sovereignty's High Command is mobilizing. They're preparing a response to your broadcast, organizing a fleet larger than anything they've assembled in 1,000 years. They're not just trying to find you. They're sending a message to the entire galaxy about what happens to those who defy them." "Let them come," Elena said quietly. "We've been dead for 4,000 years. We've got nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The sovereignty thinks they're hunting ghosts. They're about to discover that sometimes ghosts bite back." The Phoenix departed from the meeting carrying new allies, new intelligence, and new purpose. Humanity was no longer alone in their fight. and across the galaxy in 1,000 hidden bases and secret cells, the Liberation Front began preparing for a war that had been brewing for millennia. The sovereignty's reign of terror was about to face its greatest challenge. Not from weapons or ships, but from an idea that once planted could never be fully eradicated. Freedom was worth fighting for, and tyranny was not invincible. Humanity had returned, and with them, they brought revolution. Judgment Day 6 months after humanity's return, the galaxy stood on the brink of transformation. Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the Phoenix as their fleet assembled in the darkness beyond the sovereignty's reach. What had begun as a single arc ship carrying 300 survivors had grown into an armada, not through human reproduction, which would take generations, but through alliance and purpose. 200 ships now floated in formation around the Phoenix. Kelrath vessels with their distinctive bioorganic hulls that could repair themselves mid-battle. Arkan frigates crewed by a species that had been enslaved for 16 centuries. Aetheris destroyers, piloted by beings whose homeworld had been rendered uninhabitable by sovereignty weapons. Each ship represented a species that had suffered under authoritarian rule, each crew member a soul who had decided that freedom was worth the ultimate risk. Final status reports coming in, Chen announced. All vessels report ready for combat operations. Combined fleet strength, 213 ships, 42,000 personnel. Weapons systems charged and standing by. Elena pulled up the tactical display, studying their target with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The Sol system, Earth's graveyard. The sovereignty had maintained a presence there for 4,000 years, not as an occupation but as a monument to their power, a reminder of what happened to species that challenged their dominance. Now that monument would become a battlefield. But the sovereignty had not been idle since humanity's broadcasts exposed their crimes. Their response had been predictable and overwhelming. High Command had assembled a fleet of 900 warships, the largest military deployment in recorded galactic history. They called it a police action, a necessary measure to restore order and eliminate terrorist elements. The galaxy knew better. It was an extinction fleet, designed to do to humanity and the Liberation Front what they had done to Earth 4 millennia ago. Sir, incoming transmission from the Sovereignty flagship, Volkov reported. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Should I put it through? Elena nodded. The main view screen activated, showing a Sovereignty High Commander. The being was a Zalarian, an ancient insectoid species that had been founding members of the original council. Its compound eyes regarded Elena with what she interpreted as contempt mixed with curiosity. I am High Commander Zeltrath, the being said, its voice mechanically translated into English. You lead the elements responsible for seditious broadcasts and multiple attacks on sovereignty installations. You claim to represent humanity, a species eliminated for evolutionary instability 4,000 years ago. This is your single opportunity to surrender. Power down your vessels, submit to sovereignty authority, and you will be granted a swift termination rather than extended interrogation. Elena stood, facing the screen with her hands clasped behind her back. When she spoke, her voice carried across every ship in both fleets, broadcast on channels that would reach billions of beings throughout the galaxy. I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the Human Remnant Fleet. We are the survivors of a genocide your sovereignty committed against 12 billion innocent people. We are the voice of 15 other species you've erased from history. We are the hope of countless civilizations living under your tyranny, and we are here to deliver a message that 4,000 years haven't dimmed. Humanity does not bow, does not break, and does not forgive unpunished atrocities. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on the Zalarian commander. You wanted to eliminate us because you feared our potential. Today you're going to discover that your fears were entirely justified. Zeltrath's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or anger. You command barely 200 vessels against our 900. Your technology is millennia outdated. Your species is functionally extinct. What possible threat could you pose? The same threat we've always posed, Elena replied. We're humans. We specialize in impossible victories. She cut the transmission. The bridge fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into coordinated activity as final preparations commenced. This was it. 4,000 years of exile, 6 months of preparation, all leading to this moment, the Battle of Sol. The day humanity would either reclaim their legacy or join their ancestors in extinction. All ships, this is Vasquez. Elena broadcast to the Liberation Fleet. Today we fight not just for revenge, though the dead deserve their justice. We fight for the future, for a galaxy where innovation is celebrated, not punished. Where species rise or fall on their own merits, not on the whims of fearful oligarchs. The sovereignty believes might makes right. Let's show them that sometimes the righteous make might.
All vessels execute Operation Phoenix Rising. The fleet jumped into the Sol system in perfect synchronization.
Emerging from faster than light in a sphere formation that immediately split into 3 tactical groups. The Sovereignty fleet, caught momentarily off guard by the precision of the maneuver, scrambled to respond. But humanity and their allies had spent 6 months studying sovereignty tactics, analyzing every recorded battle, finding patterns in their doctrine. The Sovereignty fought like a machine, predictable and powerful but inflexible. The Liberation Fleet fought like organic beings united by purpose, each ship coordinating with others in fluid, adaptive strategies that the Sovereignty's computers couldn't predict. Where the Sovereignty expected frontal assault, they received hit-and-run strikes from unexpected angles. Where they massed their firepower, they found empty space and realized too late they had been flanked. Elena watched the battle unfold on holographic displays that showed every ship, every weapon discharge, every tactical decision in real time. The Phoenix itself hung back from the main combat, serving as command and control for the fleet. Around her, officers coordinated strike packages, rerouted power to ships whose shields were failing, adapted strategies on the fly as the battle evolved. Sovereignty forces are reorganizing, Reyes reported from Tactical. They're forming a defensive sphere around their flagship. Classic sovereignty doctrine. They'll try to outlast us through superior numbers. Then we don't let them form up, Elena decided. Signal strike Group Alpha. I want them to punch through the Sovereignty's left flank and get us a clear shot at their command ship. If we can take out Zeltrath, the rest of their fleet will lose coordination. The order went out. 30 Kelrath vessels, their bioorganic hulls absorbing incredible punishment, drove like a spear into the Sovereignty formation. Behind them came human-designed torpedoes, weapons that used quantum entanglement to phase through shields and explode inside enemy hulls. It was technology the Sovereignty had never encountered, couldn't defend against, didn't even believe was possible. 15 Sovereignty warships died in as many seconds. The gap in their formation widened. Strike Group Beta exploited the opening, their ships releasing swarms of autonomous drones that sought out vulnerable enemy vessels, like predators scenting blood. But the Sovereignty was not defeated. They adapted, bringing their superior numbers to bear. For every Sovereignty ship destroyed, 2 more moved to fill the gap. Their weapons fire intensified and Liberation vessels began to fall. The Archon frigate Defiance exploded under concentrated fire, taking 200 souls with it. The Aetheris destroyer Hope's Light lost power and drifted helplessly into a Sovereignty kill zone. Elena felt each loss like a physical blow. These were not just statistics. They were people who had chosen to stand against oppression, knowing the cost might be their lives. She had to honor their sacrifice by ensuring it meant something. Commander, I'm detecting energy buildups in the Sovereignty flagship, Chen reported. Their main weapon is charging. Whatever they're planning, it's big. Elena pulled up the data. The energy signature was unlike anything in their databases, orders of magnitude beyond normal ship-based weapons. Dreadful understanding dawned. They're preparing a planet killer, the same weapon they used on Earth 4,000 years ago. But there's no planet left to kill, Kowalski said, confused. They're not targeting a planet, Reyes realized. They're targeting us. They're going to fire that weapon into our fleet formation, a weapon designed to crack planetary crust, to boil oceans, to sterilize entire worlds. If it was fired into the densely packed Liberation fleet, it would destroy dozens of ships instantly and disable dozens more through electromagnetic pulse and radiation. The Sovereignty was willing to sacrifice their own vessels caught in the blast zone to ensure victory. Elena made her decision in microseconds. Phoenix, full power to engines. Ramming speed. Target the Sovereignty flagship. Commander. Chen's voice carried shock. That's suicide. It's necessary, Elena replied calmly. She opened a channel to the entire Liberation fleet. All ships, this is Vasquez. The Sovereignty is preparing to fire a planet-killer weapon. We cannot allow that to happen. The Phoenix will intercept, continue the mission, make our sacrifice count. Vasquez out. She closed the channel before anyone could argue. The Phoenix's engines roared to full power, acceleration pressing everyone against their stations. The massive arc ship, never designed for combat maneuvers, lurched forward like the awakening giant. Around them, space filled with weapons fire as both fleets tried to help or hinder their desperate charge. "Time to weapon discharge?" Elena asked. 90 seconds, Chen replied, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Distance to target? 100,000 kilometers. We'll reach them with 20 seconds to spare." 20 seconds. Elena activated her neural interface, opening channels to every human aboard the Phoenix. 273 survivors of Earth's destruction, about to join their ancestors in death. She needed them to understand why. "My fellow humans," she said quietly, "in 20 seconds we're going to ram the Sovereignty flagship. Our deaths will save thousands of our allies and preserve the revolution we've begun. It's not the ending any of us wanted, but it's the ending we've earned. We get to die fighting for something that matters, for a galaxy where no species will ever suffer what we suffered. Remember Earth, remember why we returned, and know that humanity's legacy won't end with us. We've planted seeds of rebellion that will grow long after we're gone." She felt their responses through the neural link, a chorus of acceptance and defiance. Her people were afraid, but they were also proud. They would die as humans had always died when facing impossible odds, standing tall, facing forward, refusing to yield. The Phoenix closed the distance. 50,000 kilometers, 30,000. Sovereignty weapons fire intensified, tearing into the arc ship's hull. Compartments decompressed. Systems failed. People died. But the Phoenix kept coming, kept accelerating. An unstoppable force driven by 4,000 years of righteous anger. At 5,000 kilometers, something unexpected happened. Ships appeared from nowhere, materializing out of faster than light directly between the Phoenix and the Sovereignty flagship. Hundreds of vessels, their hulls bearing the insignia of species Elena had never encountered. The transmission that came through was not in English or any language the translation software recognized. But the meaning was clear in every dialect, every communication protocol, every mathematical constant. "We stand with humanity. We remember the erased species. No more genocide." The new arrivals opened fire on the Sovereignty flagship with concentrated fury. Their weapons were advanced, possibly more so than anything either fleet possessed. The planet-killer weapons' energy buildup flickered and died as power systems overloaded. "Commander, we're being hailed," Volkov said, her voice shaking. It's coming from one of the new ships. The translation is difficult, but I think they're identifying themselves as the archives." Elena brought the Phoenix to a halt, confusion mixing with hope. "The archives?" A holographic image appeared on the bridge. It showed not a living being but an artificial intelligence construct, beautiful in its geometric complexity. When it spoke, the voice resonated with authority earned through eons of existence. "We are the archives," it said. "We were created by the first generation of spacefaring species in this galaxy, tasked with preserving knowledge and ensuring that no genocide goes unrecorded, no atrocity forgotten. We have watched the Sovereignty's crimes for 4,000 years. We have maintained the Phoenix Protocol, keeping Earth's memory alive. We have waited for the day when humanity would return and the galaxy would be ready to hear truth. That day has arrived. The Archives vessels moved into position alongside the Liberation fleet. With their addition, the numerical disadvantage evaporated. More importantly, their presence represented something that changed everything. Validation. Humanity was not terrorists or pirates. They were the rightful voice of the dead, endorsed by the galaxy's oldest and most respected historians. High Commander Zeltarath's face appeared on screens throughout both fleets. For the first time, Elena saw fear in those ancient compound eyes. "This is not over," the Zolarian said. "The Sovereignty will never accept." "The Sovereignty is over," Elena interrupted. "Not because we destroyed you in battle, but because the galaxy now knows the truth. Every species in your empire is watching this broadcast. They're seeing their oppressors revealed as genocidal tyrants. They're seeing that resistance is possible. Your power was built on fear and lies. Both are gone now." She gestured at the space around them. "You can fight and die here today, or you can surrender and face trial for your crimes. Either way, the age of sovereignty dominance ends now." Zeltrath was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, reluctantly, the Sovereignty flagship's weapons powered down. One by one, other sovereignty vessels followed suit. 900 ships representing millennia of authoritarian rule submitted to judgment. The Archive's AI spoke again. The Phoenix Protocol was designed for this moment. It contained not just Earth's history, but a framework for galactic governance that would prevent future genocides. We will help implement it, ensure that no species ever again claims the right to eliminate another, but the leadership must come from those who suffered under the old system. Elena looked around her bridge at her surviving crew, then at the Liberation fleet that had sacrificed so much to reach this moment. Humanity had returned for revenge but found something more important. Purpose. We accept, she said, but not as conquerors or rulers, as partners in building something better. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Sovereignty High Command faced trials for their crimes, presided over by a council of species they had oppressed. Justice was not always swift or simple, but it was thorough. The truth about 15 extinct species was revealed. Memorials established, survivors honored. The Phoenix Protocol was implemented, creating a new galactic federation built on principles of equality and mutual respect. Species were free to develop at their own pace, to innovate without fear of elimination. The archives served as neutral arbiters, ensuring that history would never again be erased or rewritten. Elena stood in the command center of what had once been Sovereignty headquarters, now transformed into the Federation Assembly. Around her, representatives from 100 species worked to build a government that served rather than dominated. It was messy and complicated and sometimes frustrating, but it was progress. Dr. Webb approached, holding a datapad. Commander, I have the final survey results from the Sol system. The Sovereignty maintained Earth's ruins as a monument, but they didn't destroy everything. There are artifacts we can recover, genetic samples that survived in their archives, even some of the orbital habitats that weren't completely destroyed. We can rebuild Earth not as it was, but as something new. Elena looked at the image on the datapad, showing the scarred surface of humanity's homeworld. 4,000 years of abandonment, but not complete destruction. There was hope for renewal, for rebirth. We'll start small, Elena decided. A memorial first honoring the 12 billion who died. Then maybe research stations, eventually settlements. But we do it together, with our allies, as part of the Federation. Earth belongs to the galaxy now. A reminder of what happens when fear defeats wisdom, and what's possible when we choose courage instead. She turned to face the representatives gathering for the day's session. So many species, so many perspectives, all trying to find common ground. It would take generations to heal the wounds the Sovereignty had inflicted, but they had something the old government never possessed: hope. Commander Elena Vasquez, last admiral of humanity's extinct military, had become something she never expected: a builder of peace. 300 humans had returned seeking revenge, and found instead a chance to reshape galactic civilization. They had been ghosts haunting the Sovereignty's crimes, but they had become architects of a better future. The Phoenix Protocol had been designed to preserve humanity if Earth fell. It had accomplished something greater. It had preserved the idea that tyranny, no matter how powerful, contained the seeds of its own destruction. That hope once kindled could never be fully extinguished. That sometimes the dead could return not for vengeance but for justice. Earth had burned 4,000 years ago, but from those ashes, something new was rising. Not just a rebuilt planet, but a galaxy transformed by the stubborn refusal of one species to accept extinction as their final chapter. Humanity had come home, and they had brought the future with them. The meeting began. Representatives took their positions. Elena sat among them, no longer a military commander but a voice for the lost, a reminder of the cost of tyranny and a symbol of resilient hope. Outside the assembly windows, ships from 100 species drifted in peaceful formation, united by purpose rather than fear. The Phoenix had risen from 4,000 years of ashes. The galaxy would never be the same again. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the Federation's borders, new species were taking their first steps toward the stars, watching the transformation with hope in their hearts. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Innovation would be celebrated. Diversity would be honored. And any government that forgot these principles would face the same fate as the Sovereignty: judgment from those they tried to silence. Humanity's revenge had been complete. But their greatest victory was this: they had ensured that no other species would ever need revenge of their own. The Phoenix Protocol had succeeded beyond its creator's wildest dreams. Humanity was alive, not just as survivors, but as examples of what was possible when hope refused to die and justice refused to be denied. The age of fear had ended. The age of hope had begun. And at its heart, 300 humans who had slept for 4,000 years dreaming of vengeance and awakened to accomplish something far greater: redemption for an entire galaxy.